Hello, everyone, and welcome to our series on the misconceptions of therapy. Today, we're going to talk about couples therapy, regular therapy, and things that people think it is, things that they think it's not. We're going to talk about questions that everybody's dying to ask therapists around this, but also we're going to debunk some myths about what therapy is and isn't. This is brought to you by Relevant Connections. We are located in Frisco, Las Colinas, and Plano. My name is Zara Samani. I am an LMFT associate. I am excited to speak about these topics today, primarily because part of my area of interest is working with South Asian families and Muslim families. And I am all about bringing information out into the open to make therapy more accessible for my community members. I'm going to turn it over to my counterpart, Dr. Kendall.
I am Dr. Jennifer Kendall. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am a supervisor and the owner of Relevant Connections. I am also a faculty member with National University, where I teach courses on couples therapy, sex therapy, addiction, and research.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Kendall. We are so excited to bring this conversation to you. So we're going to jump right in. All right. So, Dr. Kendall, in your opinion, what is couples therapy?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think there's this very rigid belief around like couples therapy is for married people who have been together for a long time, but really I work with all kinds of couples. I work with people who are dating and they just want to start their foundation. I work with people who have been cohabitating for many years, but really what it is at its core is just helping two people with their own stuff figure out how to navigate the world together. And often we get blocked by problems with communication or our own beliefs or rigid ideas of how something should be. And I kind of help people come to a middle ground.
That sounds a lot more hopeful than I think a lot of people go into therapy. Something that I hear often is this unwillingness to go or this delay in going because there's a sense of failure that's attached when we go to couples therapy. Have you experienced that?
Yes, I think that is a very common thing that people think, oh, it's not that bad. And then they wait. And these like little problems that have been sort of impacting the relationship just build and build and build until it gets to a breaking point. And at that point, there's a lot of hurt and tension and conflict. And that actually makes my job a lot harder. I much prefer people to come in when it's like things are just kind of starting to get tense, or maybe we're having these little disconnected moments here and there. But when you wait, it's sort of like, I think we talked about this the other day, like a cavity, right? If we have a sore tooth and we go, oh, I'll take care of it later, we can wait, it'll be fine. But the longer we wait, the worse the damage is. And ultimately, the worse the treatment's going to be. And so we want to, get in and get early, and then we can help prevent some further damage in relationships.
Okay, so that means that what I'm hearing you say, right, is that therapy is not about failure, but also a large warning to everybody. If you want less damage, come in sooner, right, is what I'm hearing. And I think the other thing that's important to understand, is that all couples, all relationships, right? So I would even say we're talking about
100%.
couple therapy, yeah, but actually any relation, you can come in with your sibling, you can come in with your best friend, you can come in with a work family. Like you're working, whatever, husband, wife, we know how we build relationships and work. But that it is so natural for any healthy relationship to have disagreements, right? But it's not necessarily the disagreements that are concerning or that end up piling up. It's the way in which we talk about our disagreements, right?
100%. Yes.
I think something that I often see, but also experience as a human being myself, is that I wish I could disagree better. I wish I had like healthier fights. Sometimes I can't
We're
help
all
it,
human.
right? I lean into I lean into just like sticking it to my partner or being a little mean. And I know that I would love, to have better tools, to be able to have these arguments that are going to happen, but just have them in a less destructive and damaging way, right?
That is the goal.
Yeah. And I think that's what, at least from my understanding too, like what we provide here is tools we have de-escalation, coping skills, but also tools, right? To have better, it's not to, the goal is not to eliminate arguments. The goal is to have better arguments.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of it's learning about ourselves. Like people think we're coming to couples therapy. I don't know. A lot of times couples come in and they want me to play the judge and jury. And it's like, that's not what I'm about, right? Is I want to help both of you understand yourself and what your goals are and come up with ways that the couple can reach those goals. It's sort of like coming to a personal trainer. I can give you exercises, I can give you techniques, I can help kind of tweak things, but ultimately it is up to the couple coming in to do the work.
Yeah. And I think to, follow that example, it's up to the couple doing work. But every time, even when you go to a personal trainer, there's a plethora of reasons as to why people go. So sometimes I want to lose weight. Sometimes I actually have a targeted area that I want to grow strength in.
Yep.
Sometimes it's looking at my age and saying, well, I want to do personal training for longevity. I may be, super like the right size that I want to be, and maybe I don't need it
Mhm.
today. But I know for me, one of the reasons I go to the gym is actually because I want future Zara, who is in her 60s and 70s, to be able to have the freedom to travel the world without having, hips and knees that hurt. And that means I start today. So I think
So it's
similarly,
preventative maintenance.
exactly, right? Exactly. And some people go for maintenance, right? To maintain the muscles that they have. If you don't keep using the muscles, they atrophy, right? So to maintain what we've grown. So I think the same goes for couples therapy or relationship therapy is sometimes you need to get fit. Sometimes you just have target areas that you want to strengthen. And sometimes it's preventative, right? For things so we don't get breakdowns later on. Let's go now. So yeah. So as we're talking about what it is, what is not couples therapy or what is not relationship therapy?
I think when we have, or maybe I might tweak that question about like what's not appropriate, right? And I think when one person is really struggling with life or untreated or unmedicated mental illness, like that really does make couples therapy more difficult because couples therapy is not about um, treating that sort of thing. The other thing couples therapy is not is it is not, like I said before, I'm not the judge and jury. I don't play the blame game, right? And so my job is not to come in and say, yes, your partner is an awful person and they should go to relationship jail. My job is to really help you to get back. Every couple starts out with positivity and hope and like care and love for each other, but we get hurt along the way. And this hurt then blocks us from being able to connect and find each other again. And so my job is really to help understand and heal the hurt so that we can get back to the place that we were when we first started. I want to say like we can never go backwards, right? But I want to help create something that feels good again, as opposed to staying stuck in this place of disconnection where a lot of couples stay for many, many years.
So what I'm hearing you say is if I bring my partner in, you're not going to help me throw him under the bus. Is that right?
Nope, not my job. And I will tell you when you come in my room, I don't play the blame game. So
So let me go find somebody else for that. That's when you call your friends, right? They'll side with you and be like, yeah, of course that guy's a jerk. But when I go to you, that's not what I'm going to get, is it?
and there may be some couples therapists out there that will do that, right? But that is certainly not me. I don't, there are so many different ways to live our life, and I don't want to put my ways of living life or being in a relationship. I mean, there are some societal norms that, anything if so I do want to caveat that, right? If there's some active abuse, if there's like emotional abuse going on, if there's physical abuse, certainly I am going to take sides and I'm going to say like this is not okay and we've got to take steps to get out of this, but that is pretty rare. And so in general I don't take sides and I don't play the blame game.
Something that I want to add to this conversation too is that, something that you said about not imposing your way of living or your ideas of relationship onto others. And that's one of the reasons I do the work that I do as a South Asian, right? Is that sometimes it's difficult to kind of understand the norms of our community, which are different than maybe the host culture that we're in, right? Even if I was born and raised here, and yet I was also raised by a family or my parents were immigrants, right? So I'm getting a lot of those value systems. And sometimes it's nice to have somebody who understands those value systems and can work within them. Because sometimes when we go elsewhere, I'm happy to hear that here at Relevant Connections, when we work together too, there's this sense of understanding what the couple wants and where they come from and helping them to navigate to their goals within their context.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really critical part of, wherever it is that you choose to go. that you look for a therapist that is open to your understanding of what a relationship is and works towards your goals, whatever they might be, even if you
Mhm.
have personal differences with what that looks like.
Oh, I
Um,
completely agree with that.
yeah. Let's talk about something that interests me and that I would love to share with our wider audience is that these days, couples therapy or therapy in general has become a lot more normalized, which is awesome. And I think the clients that we have often come in with like knowledge of existing therapy models too, which is fabulous, right? Because you're coming in armed, eager, ready to go, and we're here to support you. I want to talk a little bit about the different types of therapy that we use in our office, but also the ones that are in pop culture. So I'm sure some of our audience members have heard Gottman. I,
Oh
for
yeah.
one, love EFT. It's my favorite model, even though I dip into others. And then, of course, we've got psychoanalysis, which is, someone on the couch behind you that all the movies show. So you want to share with us a little bit about your understanding of the differences?
So I think each model has sort of strengths and weaknesses, right? Like I really love Gottman, but I think that they are very heavy on behavior and just like very what I would consider like up here. And when I'm talking about this is like, okay, this is how we're going to have a conversation, and there's really good rules on this. There's things like soft startup, and we get to learn how to approach our partner in a way that doesn't create defensiveness. But I like to combine something like Gottman with EFT because EFT is really going to look at the underbelly of what's going on. So why is my partner becoming defensive when I ask him to take the trash out? Or why is my partner getting upset and shutting down when I say that I'm not feeling emotionally connected? This is where EFT really nicely will help us understand like where each person is coming from and why they feel triggered or upset by the certain things that they do. And we can really learn to, like, most people don't even look at their internal world because we were not taught that, right? And so,
Right.
even just a little bit of like, well, hey, why do you think you got so mad? And we take a moment to like think about it. And it's like, oh, well, I felt really disconnected or I felt really disrespected in that moment. And it can be like that aha moment of like maybe your partner goes, oh, I didn't realize that what I was saying or how I was saying it was coming across. And so I think utilizing Gottman to sort of identify those four horsemen or the defensiveness or like where our start using I language, right? Those are really good. But then combining with like something like EFT to really understand, okay, why does that create defensiveness? Or why do I use those four horsemen when my partner comes at me this way? And then for me, I like to dabble. I am a hoarder of models, I feel like, because every new one that I've learned about, I wanted to go and take the training and learn more. And so I feel like over the years, I've really developed my therapist tool bag. And so I will bring in things from internal family systems is one that's been kind of popular lately. And that is certainly one of my favorites. I don't think there are any therapists who don't use CBT to some degree. And so that it's just really hard to work with our thoughts and our feelings without dabbling in CBT. But sometimes what my couples are bringing in is very solution focused, right? And there is a very distinct, narrow problem that we'll kind of figure out like where did the problem start, what's keeping it going, and what can we do to solve it. And so really we are going to tailor our treatment to every couple because every couple is unique and complex in their own ways. And so there's definitely not a one size fits all model.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's also important per couple. I've noticed certain things work or better or great with like South Asian couples, Muslim couples. I love EFT as a base model of like I really do feel like emotions lie at the heart of our interactions and that they drive our conscious and subconscious ways of behaving. And I also know that especially, for a lot of us in this culture, emotions are just not something that we talk about.
Right.
Not only do we not talk about it, but there's no awareness of it, which to me is just mind blowing because it is so fundamental to the way in which we connect with each other. That to not have a language around it can be really debilitating, but also like how intimidating to come to couples therapy, which is already stigmatized, right? And then to be like, we're going to talk about emotions, which is let me run to the hills right now, right? Like that
Right.
is not. So I really love Gottman. And I also love narrative because it's a good entry point. It's a good entry. So I love Gottman and CBT because I think they're really great entry points that focus on behaviors, where that's like kind
Mhm.
of an easier start than just going straight into the meat of things.
Sure. Yeah.
And I also love it because often when couples come in, really like when they're high conflict couples, right now, like the first thing we need to do is learn how to exist in a room without biting each other's heads off. So Gottman's
Yeah.
great for that. But I
Yeah.
also really love narrative because it helps to, for me, the narrative approach of labeling and externalizing things helps to
Mhm.
take away blame. I think
Mm.
blame is a big part of our culture, often too, right? Performance and blame and guilt and shame around that. So kind of
Right.
separating that idea that this is not us, or this idea is not only, it's not the only thing that I am. It's a part of
Mhm.
me, it's one thing that exists, and separating that so that we can have a less heated sort of engagement with some of the harder topics.
Absolutely. And yes, I love that approach. I think when we have people who are just so angry and defensive with each other, we definitely need to take a softer approach. That is for sure.
One of the things I want to talk about in our future series, if you guys are interested in our audience, is taking some sample cases and working them through the cycles of EFT and how we might approach it. Because we get, I think, a lot of couples that are, it's not so clear as like the pursuer withdrawer, but sometimes withdraw, right? So,
And people are messy, and it's definitely
mhm.
not good. Sometimes you're one and sometimes you're another, and the
Yeah.
next day you've switched. And so, yes.
Something I've learned in my time is that whatever you are outside tends to be the opposite of what you are in the bedroom in terms of your cycle. So,
That, yes,
right?
that is so much more. It's a whole nother layer, right? And
Yeah.
so but we do tend to kind of mirror things, but in a reverse sort of way.
Exactly. Yep. So if you're interested, let us know and we'll have that as a future topic. Our last question for today, that I think will be a great end to our intro to therapy, is something that I love to see other therapists' reactions on. So there's, like I said earlier, there's a lot of really great information going around that's making therapy more accessible and the language of therapy more accessible. And then sometimes because of social media, we tend to take that to an extreme. So
Oh, I know what you're gonna ask.
so when you as a therapist have somebody that comes in and is insistent that their partner is the N-word is narcissist, what are you thinking?
But I mean, this goes back to we don't play the blame game, right? And so my core, there, as most people know, right, narcissism is on a spectrum, and there is some really healthy, like, narcissism, right? We have to be able to set boundaries and advocate for our needs and to be a little bit selfish. But in relationships, when we become distressed, the more we withdraw or the more we get defensive, the more self-focused we're going to get, right? And so there are a lot of relationships that when we are in a disconnected cycle, it's going to look like narcissism. Now, that is not to say that there are not truly narcissistic people out there. And if that's the case, we address it one piece at a time. But I do think that there are a lot of people that come in and want to say, like, oh no, my wife or my husband or my partner or whoever is definitely a narcissist. And so we figure that out, right? And some of that comes with exploring, like, well, does this relationship still serve you, right? Is this still something? If they are, personality disorders are not really treatable. There's not a whole lot of room for growth in there. And so um that's one avenue, but I want to look at like different roads, right? Can we look at maybe whatever's going on and figure out, my guess is that if somebody comes in and they say my partner's a narcissist, well, they weren't in the beginning, right? And so that makes me feel hopeful that maybe something happened or there's a wound or a hurt or a wall there, that if we could do some of that deeper work that we've talked about, we might understand where this is coming from, why our partner is so shut down and self-focused, and maybe we can break down that wall a little bit and realize that they're not so much a narcissist, they're just somebody who's really hurting and doesn't know how to communicate. But this is one case at a time, but I do always take that lightly. It's sort of like when you go to the doctor and you say you have a fever. Well, okay, there's a lot of different reasons for fever, right? And so I feel like when somebody says my partner is a narcissist, you're saying, okay, I have a fever, right? And so it's my job to help figure out, like, where is the infection coming from? What is causing that? And that is certainly some of the work we would do.
Yeah. I like your medical example because Sometimes I might have a fever and think that I am dying of cancer or dying of like, my brother's a doctor, and one time I had called him and I was like, man, I don't feel good. And his immediate reaction, I had a slight fever, and his immediate reaction was, go to the emergency room, you have meningitis. And like literally every answer to every question was, you have meningitis, go to the hospital. And I think
Right.
when I think about narcissism, right, I think about this idea that it's
It's
maybe a
not always
symptom,
cancer.
right? Correct, right? That you maybe have traits that are egotistical, right? Or self-centered or self-serving
Right.
or narcissistic, like maybe personality traits, as opposed to being pathologized as a narcissist, right? So I might have a fever. Does it mean that I have meningitis? No. So
Right.
we can deal with the origins of fever, come at it from a place of compassion, because I think you were mentioning, in one of our earlier conversations, that really, like, narcissism at its root is a fear of vulnerability, right? And it's not necessarily
Mhm.
rooted in your brain. It's not biological. And so we get to look at, where is this coming from? How did this person develop into this way? What is it that they're not getting that then
Right.
exhibits in these kinds of behaviors? And I really like the approach because it's not pathologizing. It's not a forever thing. It's not a
Right.
damning, hopeless situation, but rather something that started and gets to have a root cause that we can maybe explore, or at least alleviate, the symptoms of that problem. So
Right. No, I think most cases of narcissism are probably treatable. That is my stance on that.
you're not gonna get meningitis and you're not gonna die. It's just a fever.
Not all fevers are cancer.
Correct. Well, that is our session for today. Thanks for joining us on the basics of therapy, what it is, what it isn't, misconceptions. We hope you enjoyed this. And if you have other topics that you want us to address that are not already on our list, please let us know. Otherwise, we will see you on our next video series.